Welcome to the Writer at Work podcast. We're doing the mini episode, and I am Ms. Catherine MH. And with me, I have my guest.
Stephen Schneider, I go by S.A. Schneider.
So we are going to be talking about some writing careers, and this type is different even for me. So let's start with the first question of what is middle grade writing?
That is a great question. I'm glad you started with that one because I get actually irritated when people say, oh, you write middle grade, or I write middle grade, or middle grade books. To me, middle grade's a demographic, not the style you write. Yes, the target is for younger kids, not adults, but go look at middle grade. It's everything. I write fantasy for middle grade. I see lots, that's what Harry Potter is, right? Magical fantasy, urban fantasy for younger kids and adults. Yes, you don't get the romance and the naughty things and the swearing. It does fit the demographic, but middle grade covers all those grounds.
Okay, so follow-up question on that then. What is the demographic?
That's a good question too, because I've seen that all over the board. I shoot for like 5th to 8th grade, though it extends down into 3rd, 4th, and sometimes up into 9th. Part of it depends on the kids' reading levels. And sometimes I think people miss that. Yes, as kids get older, there's older books for them. But if a kid doesn't like to read, or a kid's not good at reading because of dyslexia, or they've never been, introduced to reading, that sometimes you try and throw Harper Lee at them in 9th grade, and they're like, yeah, this is why I don't like this. But you throw something at them like Harry Potter, and they may like it and want to read. One of my favorite authors, Jeff Strand, had a review on one of his books. He writes mostly comedy horror, but he wrote a few young adult, middle grade type fiction, which are really good and funny. They fit that demographic. And he got a review from a teacher saying, I'm so glad I found your books because I have students, mostly boys, who just don't want to read. And I introduced them to your book. They loved it and they wanted more. That to me is exactly what you want to do. And so again, middle grade, take it about 5th to 7th, sometimes 4th, sometimes 8th.
So why would someone want to write there? Or like, why did you?
Because it was me, plain and simple. When I first started, I was trying to write adult horror thriller type, stuff I read, sci-fi, just all the, and I was getting frustrated. It just didn't sound right. It wasn't coming out right. And I was getting all sorts of feedback, change this, do this, blah, blah, blah. And it just was really getting frustrating because it's like, I can't be a writer. I'm not a writer. I'll never be able to do this. But I was working with Jay Thorne and Zach Bohannon at the time. And it just, something they said, something I said, we were talking and it clicked. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a middle grade writer. That's my problem. I don't write adult stuff. I don't think like that. I mean, I get accused by my kids all the time. Some quote from Doctor Who where they call me the intergalactic 8-year-old. And I was like, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't it click? So it was just me. I wasn't really so much a choice as it was just what I was destined to do.
Awesome. All right. So what is the best part of writing for middle grade, followed by what is the worst part about it?
It's sometimes it's kind of the same thing. The best part, it's really like being a kid and playing again. It's like having Legos and no one looks down upon you for playing with it. So you can enter any world you want, create all these worlds and have fun with them and the characters and be a kid, but you don't get frowned upon because you're playing Lego. The worst part, and I think a lot of people would get into this, is actually having to worry about doing the marketing because you can't really market to the 10-year-olds. You have to market to their parents, but you still have to have the 10-year-olds know about the book because the parents aren't looking for you. They have to have the kids tell them. And the best marketing is word of mouth. So if you get one kid in a classroom to love your book, they're all going to want to read it.
What advice would you give for somebody who wants to start getting into this style of writing?
Take any advice anyone gives you with a grain of salt, including that piece of advice. Just because something worked for me and is what I do doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. If you want to get into it, you got to be a kid and you got to enjoy other kids' literature. So that's the advice. You got to understand it. You got to be a kid.
All righties. Well, thank you so much. Where can my listeners find you?
sa-schneider.com.